And I think there's a snobbishness with reading books. They are a bit outdated. They're a little bit like playing the spoons and tap dancing and the theatre. They were good once, but things have moved on.
The head's not quite on the right place. That's his little issue that he's got to work on for the moment.
My apartment smells of rich mahogany.
Look, I'm all for innovation, and I advocated putting a scrum half in the line out. It sounds great, but it's bollocks idea, really.
Hello and welcome to Under the Sticks, a podcast brought to you by Pro14 and Rugby. My name is Andy McGeady, and this week, as every week, we bring half-baked ideas, which we try and transform and present as authoritative rugby insight. With me today is Mr. Sean Holley. How are you?
Good, thanks, Andy. Yeah, all good in the Holley household, apart from the fact that my national team and professional teams are the worst in Europe. Other than that, yeah, soldiering on. We got England this week. Looking forward to it.
That's okay, because you're resolutely neutral now these days, isn't that right?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. Dean Bud, how are you?
Very, very well, actually. Don't be too quick claiming worse than Europe there, Sean.
Yeah, well, hang on. We got the Six Nations coming fast.
But no, I'm damn good. I've had a pretty productive day. I've been accepted to head back to New Zealand, so we're living on borrowed time here in the UK. So I'm going to have to make the most of these last couple of shows we've got.
Last couple of shows, hold on. There's definitely a contract for Super Rugby Aotearoa when it comes around again for watch-alongs. You are a man on the ground in Kiwi land, right?
He'll be a man in the pub, that's what he'll be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, me and Chiefs go every weekend.
Now we're talking. We'll come to some of the regulars already in the comments section in a second. In the background, pulling the strings, we have, as always, super producer Adam Redmond. But with us now, with a glorious bookshelf, it's Paul Eddison. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you back. We haven't had you on the show for a while. And for those viewers who might not be familiar with Paul is our pair of eyes on French rugby and general knowledgeable rugby man. We've a few things to get to today. We're going to go through the rundown in a second. Sean, you were in Swansea.
I was back at St. Helens, which was it was strange. It was really nice. It felt like an old school game, you know. That's what it felt like. I played on the ground. I played cricket on the ground. I've coached teams on the ground, so it was really nice. Just a shame, you know, there was no fans in, but I really enjoyed the game. I knew Benetton would be better. And Ospreys are pretty vulnerable. So I think I tipped 22-20 as the result, and it was 24-22, and it went right down to the wire, didn't it? And it had all things. It had yellow cards, red cards, you know, TMOs, and some real good rugby. And I enjoyed it. It was proper old school, yeah.
So we'll go back. We'll go to the actual rugby in a second. But the weather was pretty good because, like, in fairness, we spent a lot of time talking about fog a couple of weeks back, but like. It was a nice day.
It was a glorious day on the front there, and you know, Swansea can have some decent weather. It's funny, you go 8 miles down the road to Healey where Wales were playing, and it was dreadful the day before. But it was lovely. Always funny about the weather. Shane Williams, who was my meant to be my co-commentator, he was with me as a pundit. He's doing this beast of November at the moment where he's running these ridiculous amount of miles, and he had run 14 miles in the morning, came to work to commentate in the game, and then got changed in the car park and had to run another 10 miles down the seafront in Swansea. I just jumped in my car, had a coffee and went home.
That's not good.
That's not healthy.
Adam, if you're out there, what do you reckon the difference was between Sean's setup for the Edinburgh game and Sean's setup for the Swansea game? Pretty accurate.
Yeah, that's me in Swansea. Yeah, just that after finishing the game, Ospreys win. Yeah, sun is out, and oh my God, the
sun's out, guns out.
Yeah, actually, so bad Nick there. That's a few years ago. That is.
That's one for all of the regulars who were in early. No one else gets that one, lads. So hello, James Gill, Michael Jenkins.
Let's
we'll replay it for Chief Girl. Yeah. Ian Gilbert, hi from Madrid. Harley Worthy, James O'Brien, Gregor Galway, Maro DeMarco, Gregor Galway, silent, right? There's a lot of people in already, lads. So what are we going to do today? We're going to look through a quick run around the test match action from the last weekend and the Guinness Pro 14. Scarlets, very decent performance. Are they the best hope for Wales? Holley's heroes, Ben Healy and George North on form, because you're not allowed to talk about Mr. Coombs or Mr. Casey from Munster again. We have to rotate it around. We'll have a little bit of time with Paul Eddison on French rugby. So a couple of interesting things there, particularly how the French squad is being actually set up for these autumn games, which we probably haven't spent time enough on. Sean wants to discuss, have we too many replacements at international level? And then we will also talk good stats versus bad stats.
Which Andy
close to my heart. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Okay, Nations Cup. Ireland, England. Do we start there?
Yeah.
Jesus, lads.
You're up for it.
Paul, I had to switch from coffee to Guinness a little before halftime, and it was an early kickoff. That wasn't my intent. But watching me from your position, do you understand mine?
Yeah, completely. That was, I mean, the final score doesn't make it look that one-sided, but it was just so dominant. I mean, Ireland, it feels like it's become kind of a running theme when they've gone to Twickenham, doesn't it? That they're just kind of bullied. It reminds me a bit of these Saracens-Leinster games that we've had as well. They're just, it's the same problem over and over. The pack doesn't seem to be able to stand up to that English pack at the moment. And from there, I mean, I feel a bit bad for Ross Byrne. He started 2 games for Ireland, and they've both been behind packs that have just been absolutely hammered.
Yeah, and that shouldn't be underestimated from the halfbacks. If you were not given a platform, it's very, very difficult. But there was something about the way that the game was being played that England looked extraordinarily comfortable for the entire game. At no time did they look in trouble, and a moment or two of magic from Johnny May, great. But if you're an English fan, I'd be very, very happy with that, because Ireland are not a bad team, but England made them look very average.
Yeah,
I think they're in second gear as well, and I really do. You get that feel when English teams are in this mood. It's a real worry for everybody else. They're confident. They're on the edge of arrogance, but you want that at international rugby, and they've got the bit between their teeth. They're not conceding points, so they you can see they've spent a lot of time on their defensive work. They're so physical, and I'm not just talking about the usual suspects. And Dean would back me on this, I like the likes of Curry and Underhill, a little bit unsung heroes. Not your massive Itogis, Launchburys, Vunipolas, but real hard, compact, physical guys, and young, and they look so good, Dean, don't they?
Yeah, I don't want to be a position hater, being an ex-lock, but Itoji getting player of the day, I just thought, it just, like, Underhill is just phenomenal, and Curry for that fact, but Underhill, you just see him smashing every person he tackles. I'd love to see some stats on how many of his tackles are dominant tackles, because it'd be over 50%, and that in the professional area is a phenomenal stat. He in defence is freakishly good. I've been hit once at Twickenham by Curry as well. Just very unassuming. Doesn't really give you that much, but I think he popped my shoulder out from me being like that and tackled me. And they are strong and powerful and everywhere. There's loads of chat about who should be the loose trio for England, and God, they can just pick whoever they want, because they've got about 8 guys that are just at that level. It's pretty special.
Yeah,
there's a lot going on.
Exeter Chiefs, Paul, and Friday night, Sam Simmons.
Oh, how that try?
See his first one. Was his first one? He ran 30 yards, gas of a winger, scores 3 tries, not even in the squad.
Yeah.
His doesn't make any sense, though, because Eddie keeps going on about wanting these hybrid players, and you think Sam Simmons is a number 8 who you could put in the centres or on the wing and he'd do the same job, but doesn't get in. I mean, Billy Vunipola was very good at the weekend, but has not been quite in the same his best recently. But yeah, their depth in the back row is just unbelievable.
Yeah, and there's something that from the Irish perspective watching the game, it was deeply infuriating watch them play into England's strengths all day long, because England were so smart at not resourcing the breakdown when they didn't have to. They were so quick getting to their feet and so aggressive, like so aggressive with their line speed, that Ireland just said, okay, we'll just 1-2 pass, run into you, 1-2 pass, run into you all day long. And you cannot beat a defensive line like that. You just can't. Whereas I was really intrigued by seeing Billy Burns come on and does something different. Now, it isn't the fact that that chip worked. It's that the fact that he did that chip, it means the next time they're running up, well, maybe he'll chip, or maybe he'll do something like that. Now, Ross Byrne tried a couple, but it's not the same as those little small dinks, which I love to see. I mean, Sean, look, with your coaching hat on, that's very easy for me to say from a sofa many miles away. What did you see?
Yeah, no, it's a white wall of real physical dominance. There is space in behind, definitely. I think Johnny May is an exceptional athlete. I still think he lacks a little bit of skill and so on. Elliot Daly, for me, can be a bit flaky at times. So I think those sort of tactics are good, but you've got to put them in the minds of the opposition. You can show to kick and then pass. You know, you've got to have just a little bit of creativity. As they say in Houses of Parliament, and I'll refer the question to the honourable gentleman I gave a few moments ago. If Leinster played England, would they have done better than Ireland? Are Leinster better than Ireland?
See,
I like that.
This is one we've had a couple of years, but actually I'm interested. So I'm going to not answer that question, right? Because we've done that in bars and whatever in Ireland when it comes to Munster and previous generations or Leinster. So I'll ask you three. So Dean, you like that question. What do you think about when you want to answer it?
No, I think we've. It's going to slip in my mind straight away. We've seen the Crusaders. I mean, New Zealand rugby performs at that level. I mean, there's been teams in the past where at club level they're just so synchronized that I mean, it's an excuse, I guess. They've had a lot of time, Ireland, to be in sync, to be really honest. So I don't know what's missing. But generally speaking, sometimes you see club teams perform like that because they've just week in, week out know each other, doing it for years, blah, blah, blah. Ireland probably doesn't actually have that excuse because of knowing each other. But it's, I don't know, is it a coaching thing? Is it, yeah, I mean, we all know that coaches have very different perspectives on what a good game plan is and the right players to be in the right places. So Leinster seems to be doing that perfectly, and Ireland isn't. So I'm not sure. Yeah. I'll pass on from there.
Darren Downey says, you know, Pro 14 isn't the international level, and I accept that. You know, it's a little bit of a facetious question, but the point I'm trying to make is, you know, sometimes it's about combination, sometimes it's about units, and I think, you know, international rugby for me is all about selection, getting the select. That's where Warren Gatland was nailed on, you know, and has been with his Lion squads in his successful tours. So whether they're getting the selection, and this is the problem we've got in Wales at the moment. I don't think people are getting the selection right, and therefore we're not having the best opportunity. England, and I know they are blessed with depth. I can't go on about Sam Simmons when England are performing like they are because they don't need him. Simple as that.
No,
they're picking the right team, aren't they?
It's infuriating when England actually start picking the right players and making a team out of it, because they've got such depth at every level of the game, including international. Like, they will always have the players if they pick them and they get the mix right. And this is, you know, Paul Eddie Jones seems to be getting a lot of things right now.
Yeah, I think he enjoys the fact that people don't agree with everything that he's doing, and it does always feel that someone like Sam Simmons getting kind of even more build up in the press will only kind of reinforce Eddie's views on whether to pick him or not. But then again, yeah, you look at the way the team is playing and you can't really argue with kind of what he's doing. I mean, they looked exceptional at the weekend. The idea, going back to would Leinster beat Ireland, or are Leinster better than Ireland? they're very similar teams, aren't they? But they seem to have the same issues. Which one's better, I'm not sure, but they're still, when they come up against a bigger, stronger pack, that's where the problem lies. And I don't see where. Well, there needs to be a change of approach, really, doesn't there, to kind of try and rectify that, because at the moment we've seen this game too many times. And I mean, James Ryan said they're getting closer, but it really didn't feel like it.
No.
Yeah, some things in rugby don't change, and when you're getting absolutely mullered physically up front, that's a bad thing. And when your line-out's not functioning, that's a bad thing. But we're not going to drain Ireland versus England too much. Wales, Georgia.
Oh, God.
Do we have a lot to talk about there, or will we spare the people?
Look, 13 changes, pretty atrocious conditions. Wales lacking in confidence as a squad, as a nation. Regions not playing well. Would we have taken 18-0? Probably yes. You know, I think, you know, most Welsh people would. What we wouldn't have taken is the performance. I think I said last week, we're looking for some sort of performance, some sort of identity. We didn't quite get that again. You know, we are struggling in the contact area. We are struggling with the shape of our attack. You know, we only had to make 90 tackles. We kicked the ball 26 times. Georgia missed 22 tackles. We only scored 2 tries. You know, I mean, we dominated territory in possession. So, I mean, that's the disappointing thing, I think, from us at the moment. We're not very creative. We haven't got a lot of line breakers. We don't see a lot of offloads. And Georgia, quite frankly, were a little disappointing. Our scrum was much, much better, and we've lauded that in Wales this week. But I'm looking at thinking, well, is not the Georgian scrum perhaps we were all expecting? You know, our line was a little bit better, and some young kids got on the field and put their hands up. Kieran Hardy at 9, Callum Sheedy had to start. Lewis Rees-Sammet looks the part for us. Johnny Williams did okay at 12, and as I said, the front rowers did okay. So, you know, it's a positive step, albeit not a big one.
Cameron Peary says, how good was Ryan Wright?
Yeah, I don't know if Dean saw it, but, you know, here's a guy who burst on the scene, and he offers something a little bit different. He offloads, he chips and chases as a back rower. He's you know, he's industrious. He's got a little bit of something. He was man of the match, and I think he'll play this week.
Yeah, I was really surprised of his kind of rise to fame, even in the Welsh side. Like, the back row talent that was there, and he was kind of playing head through the World Cup and everything, and he's proved me massively wrong. I think he's a really good player. But yeah, to touch on Georgia a little bit, I think they've been a little bit underwhelming. Everyone, I don't want to give Eddie more press than he deserves because he gets too much, but him blabbing on about how they're the best scrum in the world and the most dominant forward pack, it's just horse shit. We were allowed to use that because we used that last time.
We declared this last declared last week. It's part of the lexicon of the show.
But, I mean, yeah, they're just, I don't know if they're suffering from a bit of rust. I mean, who knows what's good and bad after seeing Argentina perform after so long out of the game. But they're really not up to the standard. And from a personal kind of Italian perspective, to keep hearing the same kind of records playing over and again that they deserve to be in the Six Nations, maybe, but they're not showing it at the moment. Not from any performances they've put out there, are they even close to it?
No, their pack's really gone backwards. Like the scrum, it's been about 18 months where it's really faded. I don't know whether some of it's like Nariashvili's been a great loose head for years, but it's maybe getting towards the end. They haven't quite replaced some of those guys. They've got really good young teams coming through. Like they've been one of the best teams in terms, or one of the nicest surprises at under 20s level for 3 or 4 years now. And this generation will be good, but they're not there yet. And yeah, I mean, I've been as fed up with you about hearing, oh, Italy should be kicked out of the Six Nations. Like people haven't been watching. Georgia needs opportunities, but there's no point swapping them in for Italy. You're going to have the same issue, or it'll be even worse. Like a team who are clearly a level below. Yeah, I mean, we saw when they played. What was it? 2018, wasn't it? And Italy won fairly comfortably. There is a gap there, and the solution is not just replacing one struggling team with another struggling or another team who would be even worse.
Tell you what's interesting is doing the commentary on Georgia under 20s against Italy under 20s in the World Championships. Oh my God. Work that one out. You know, there's a lot of rehearsal, a lot of research done on that one. My God, how do you say this?
Exactly.
There'd be some serious heat and passion out there, I'd imagine, amongst it all.
A lot of mumbling, mate. Healy.
A lot of names. That's what you're paid the big bucks for, Sean, isn't that right?
Thanks, mate.
Okay, let's go on to France. So Scotland, France, and some more things about French rugby. So before we go on to the French rugby bit, right? What would you take away from that game, Paul?
They were clearly very conscious of what happened when they lost last time. Obviously, lots of people focus on the red card, but they were already playing quite poorly in that match. It was the only, I know we're going to talk about stats later, but Galtier underlined this. The defeat to Scotland in the Six Nations was the only game where they kicked less than their opponents. It was the only game where they had more possession than their opponents, and that's not the game they want to play. So this one, they weren't going to take any chances. They kept it as tight as they possibly could. They didn't take any chances in their own half. They pretty much kicked everything away. Mathieu Jalibert is such an exciting fly half, and it felt like we didn't really see him much. He just did enough. We've seen lovely drop goal, but beyond that, he was kind of as straight down the line as you can possibly imagine. But I thought it wasn't comfortable because obviously it went down to Stuart Hogg had a chance to kind of set up a potential chance to draw the game at the end, but I thought they were comfortably the better team. I know Hogg said we were the better side for 75 minutes, but France had multiple chances. They got one try. I think it was a very close game, but they got the deserved win, and obviously that means they've beaten everyone they've played this year now. And we'll see what happens with the young guns for the next 2 weeks.
So here's the question I have. To us outside French rugby, right? So not just outside France, but for those of us who don't watch French rugby every week, from what we see of this French side, and it's gone a little while now, we're very, very excited as pure rugby fans of what this team can do. From your coverage of French rugby and what you read in the press there, is that feeling the same? Do they get that same collective sense of excitement?
Yeah, I think it is really building back up. Even just the number of people watching on TV. Obviously, we're in a slightly weird situation with no fans in the stadium, but that doesn't really influence the TV figures as much, I don't think. But people are really tuning in. There's a lot of interest in this French team. It helps having quite a few young players who are exciting. You look at the Dupont, the Ntomac, people like that. The previous generation, they've not really had anyone to look up to. Bastereau was probably the only kind of person who transcended rugby, who was kind of a star in their own right. Everyone else was a rugby player, but wouldn't necessarily be recognised on the street. Whereas there's enough faces coming through now who they can go beyond just being the rugby fans who know who they are. Dupont's obviously exceptional. He's just another level, but there's quite a few of these young guys. And they are still so young that you can really feel something building. Obviously with plenty of shenanigans going on behind the scenes and kind of fights between the federation and the league and all sorts that always hangs over French rugby. But I think there's quite a good feeling about where this can go.
If Bernard Lamport is involved somewhere, there will be shenanigans. I think we know that, and it's fair comment. Question from Harley Worthy, regular in the comment section. Paul, why don't France play Carbonell?
He'll get a chance in the next couple of weeks, but Jalibert was kind of the next big thing 2 years ago when he got injured. He's shown more than any of them at club level, more than Ntomac and more than Carbonell. So I think it was only right he got his chance. And then Carbonell, he's two-time under-20s World Cup winner, so he's pretty special as well. It's just a generation where they've got 3 21, 22-year-old fly halves who are all kind of breaking through, and they'll get their chance as and when.
How good's that?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. Yeah, Jalibert he made his debut in the Ireland game with the Johnny Sexton long drop goal, and I was really excited to see him play, and then we broke him for a while. So sorry, Indeed. French rugby, but he is back. The talk was just before we move on, the setup of the French squad. We've got a new French captain for the next game in Serran, but how are they set up for the autumn tests?
So for the autumn, they were restricted to 3 matchday squads across the whole autumn. And the question was how they'd manage that. They basically decided they'd do the Wales warm-up game, Ireland and Fiji as the first team. and just go with those guys all the way through. Then when the Fiji game was called off, it meant that the first team were able to play in Scotland. The only change they made was Baptiste Sohan was dropped for the Scotland game, and they've brought him back for this one to be captain. I think that was pretty much planned in advance. He's far and away the most experienced player. He's got 38 caps, I think. There's a couple of others with a few caps, and then like 16 of the 31 are completely uncapped. They've got no capped locks in the squad, one capped centre. So the team that plays Italy will be incredibly raw. And then whoever they play the week after, they'll have another captain, because Sohan will have played his 3 matches. So God knows who that'll be. But this weekend, I don't know what I mean. I think they could really struggle against Italy. I've been impressed, by that game in Rome against Scotland. I think they're building something. Obviously, losing Jake Pelledri is quite a blow, but I think that will be tough. And as exciting as it is to see a young team thrown in together, it's quite hard to expect them to kind of get up to speed quickly, even though there's players who I can't wait to watch. I mean, Sekou Makalu is about as exciting a flanker as you'll see, and I'd say probably will be the quickest person in the entire competition. He's just unreal, but it's quite a lot to expect him to replace guys who've had months and months together and get them up to speed.
So, Dean, what's the feeling from a former Italian international looking ahead to all of these outrageously talented but raw Frenchmen?
Well, I mean, I know from speaking to the Italian boys, they're prepped for this because they know it's a massive opportunity. I mean, the French games, I mean, typically the last one of the Six Nations last year, we should have won. I think 2 years in a row, actually, should have won. Lost. But a lost ball over the line and some just some silly things. So, there's a real opportunity to pit France, and to say for Italy to beat literally one, if not the best team in the world right now is France, would be such an achievement, because the players on the field may not be the best, but that doesn't actually matter when you look back on it and see Italy beat France. So the boys are actually pumped for it. I know that, speaking to a few of them. I think there still be, we may find out tomorrow that there may be another few losses and guys. So they might not quite be at full strength either. But they're pretty excited, and I'm pretty excited.
For any regulars in the comment section, know that that's Dean Bud speak for. There's news coming. Right. Okay. So, Christian Hyde question: where is Paul Williams? Has the Russians got him? Possibly. We don't know.
Running scared. He's a puppy fan. He's running scared. Stringing rackets or making up. He's on Twitter. That's what he is. He's got no time because he's put in large spaces between his sentences on Twitter and just really being a sycophant and trying to get more followers. That's what he's doing.
Dean, can we put Christian Hyde's second question to you? Can we?
Exactly. I was just going to say, I've tweeted at Under the Sticks last week. You'll see my yoga routine in fast forward, obviously. But there's a few little stretches there that you really see a bit of glute stretching going on. Just have a look, flick through the Twitter section of Under the Sticks, and you'll see how to loosen those glutes right up real quick.
Producer Adam Redmond reckons Williams has been testing out the Russian vaccine. This could also be true. That's a real in-joke. It's gone on a long time. Right. 2 more games this weekend. France, Italy, Ireland, Georgia. I really hope that Georgia get a chance to, get on the scoreboard. That would be good. There's not going to be much of a test there, I don't think. Wales, England, Sean Holley. Who's got the bigger handicap? Wales against England or Italy against France?
Knowing the bookies as I do, they're quite smart. Actually, I had a look today. Only on the Wales have been given 15 points.
That is correct. So that's only half your answer.
I would imagine, as Paul says, with the French team, then Ireland are probably closer to France than Wales are to England. Am I right?
Wales, England, +15. Italy, France +16. Ireland, Georgia
based on
Ireland,
Paul's
Georgia,
analysis
35.
of the squad, those odds are going to change. I'm telling you now. And
Lump on
Dean's
Italy.
sort of breaking news about the Italians. They might be missing a bit. But yeah, I think again, if you asked a cross section of the Welsh public now, maybe some of our listeners will come in here. Would we take 15? Probably 15. If it was at 15 or one score, perhaps, then because they're looking at England, and when they do put their foot down the accelerator, they sort of blow insides away first half, and they've been immense. And then they're sort of easing off a little bit, not easing off, but they're not really then nailing. I watched them against Italy. It was 40 points. They should have really blown them. Georgia, they got to 40 and just went, lit up, and that's the end of that. And really, I know Ireland sort of came back and huffed and puffed, but they could have really stepped on Ireland again. So our concern is they're going to do that on Saturday. It looks like the weather's okay. So Park of Scarlets, those who've been there, it does swirl around. But if the weather's dry and fine like it was in St Helens on Sunday, oh my goodness! Well,
listen, it's a Welsh home game. You order that pitch however much you want, lads. That's what I'd recommend.
I really wonder. Every year there's just one of those kind. I think I've become known as a bit of a speculator with some of the scores I've given out over the last wee while. I really wonder if this is one of those games which just Wales, things just click, and they get up for it straight away, and England get a bit shell shocked, and we think, oh God, is this what? I mean, going off history and every single stat and everything, there's no chance. But I just wonder if Wales just needed that little ugly win to feel a bit better about themselves. If they get an early try, I think it could be game on.
Okay, speaking of ugly, I need a word right about the Lions selections featuring retired players in new kits. I am not happy. I am not happy at all.
I quite like it. I thought Guscott looked brilliant, didn't you?
Guscott's about 72 years old. Like, he's in good nick. But he shouldn't be in a new kit. He's like a baseball manager running around in the baseball kit, the same guy as the superstar 23-year-olds playing.
Yeah, I think
my bigger issue is Xander Ferguson at Loosehead.
Oh, that's the teams. Yeah. I think I put on our group, didn't I? Imagine Willie John McBride in the new kit, skin tight.
I can imagine giving you a look when you suggest it. Then there's some other interesting graphics went around our group this week. Adam, is there anyone to share right now for the people? The people need to see.
Oh yeah,
there we go. Now there's your calendar. Dean, tell the people what they're looking at.
I won't say the words that came right to my head. Each year Benetton releases a calendar. Over the years, they've certainly, I'm not sure what the target market is, honestly. I'm not sure who that really appeals to.
Really? That's rubbish. I'm not sure who the target market is.
I'm not sure that appeals to women. I'm not sure that appeals to women is all I'm saying. I think that they're kind of just looking for that new age man that's a little bit more.
Why is Benvenuti chained up? That's a very good question.
I mean, each year we do a calendar, and this year it certainly got a little bit more risque with the full-on nudity and chains.
Wow. Are you in
the chains is the one I'd have. The nudity, grand lads, whatever floats your boat, whether it's Mrs. or Mistress, that's grand. The chains is the interesting one for me. That's crossing the line.
It's some real bondage, some real sicko stuff there.
Team bonding. It's all what it's about, right? Guinness Pro 14 from last weekend. We'll rattle through the results fairly quickly, and then we're going to touch on a couple of key things here. So Ospreys had a really good fight back at home from home against Benetton 24-22. Connacht walloped Zebre 47-20. Leinster 40. Cardiff Blues 5. Ulster 26. Scarlets 24 is a squeaker, that one. And on a horrendous night in Glasgow, even on a plastic pitch, Munster 27, Glasgow Warriors 13. Where do we want to start? Probably in Wales. It was a funny match you watched there in St Helens.
Yeah, it was a funny match. Osprey scored early, and I looked at Benetton. They travelled on the day. I was thinking, but I just sensed that they would have been better. I'd done the game the previous Monday, and they weren't great. Bit rusty, to say the least. But they did show a lot more. I thought Ratuva and Monteoni got into the game early. They were really hungry. I really enjoyed watching the game because it was old school and at that level, and sort of just eye level the game. It was brilliant. I was commentating on it, and they sort of clawed their way back into it. The Ospreys are struggling, much the same as Wales and a lot of our Welsh regions in our attacking game. I don't think there's enough creativity or structure or whatever it is, or talent or ball carriers, and they give 7 penalties away carrying the ball into contact, and Benetton grew into the game because they were kicking and the Ospreys was giving penalties away, and then they got a couple of driving mauls. Fiver got over for a couple, then he scored a great try, his third, I believe it was, and the red card happened to Gareth Evans, the number 8, which was a cast iron red, head on head.
That. So for anyone who didn't see that game, what was the strange thing about that red card?
I thought they had done it. I thought they had saved him. I've always seen those subs come in straight away, and he was off the field, happy days in the shower. I thought they had done really well.
For anyone who wasn't watching the game, so there's we'll call it, there was a rugby collision, right? So I'm not going to prejudice before we get to the actual decision. Gareth Evans is whipped off, as you say, Dean. They're going, lads, that didn't look great. It's about the time. Get him off. Away, out of sight, out of mind. TMO says, need a look at that, lads. Referee has a look, head on head. Red card from the bench. Yeah. You don't see it often.
No, you don't.
It was the right call.
It was warranted, yeah. And look, there was no malice in it. I think I used the term on commentary. It was reckless. And poor guy was blindsided. He didn't see it coming. And it's head on head, and it's a red card. But it just seemed to, for a moment, it stunned them, and then it just sort of galvanized them a little bit. Kieran Williams, the centre, sort of carried the ball really well. They brought Sean Venter on at 9, who just added a little bit more. The Dewi Lake and a few other forwards came on, and it just sort of lifted them a little bit. Few no arms tackles from Benetton, and they got a yellow card, and the Ospreys give a big 15-man shove over to win the game, really. So they went down to the wire. It was really great. I was a bit upset. A draw probably would have been a fair result, but yeah, it wasn't to be for Benetton.
No, it wasn't. We won't spend a huge amount of time on the other Italian fixture. Connacht really gave them a walloping, and it's a couple of wallopings they're brave now encountered. Another red card in that game, Abraham Papali, for another upright challenge. There's a couple of different views on that one right now. We'll see how the process goes with it. Leinster Cardiff. That's a lot of points again. Leinster at home. They scored within 30 seconds. Cardiff, what would they take from that, lads? Because, it's all right saying it was closer than it looked for a long time. I mean, it took Leinster a lot of time to get up to being home and hosed, really. But they had a very young team out, Sean.
I don't know. I don't take that. I heard the coach, John Mulvihill, say that we were in the game up until 60 minutes. They were not in the game. They were not, even though the scoreboard didn't show, it was all Leinster, as we know, in possession. And, again, it was mentioned, they're missing a lot of internationals. Well, hang on. I counted today. Leinster were without 14 international forwards, not players, forwards. And 10 of their 23 were aged 22 or under. So, and I think all 23 of the squad are eligible for Ireland. So you're running out of excuses against Leinster then, aren't you? And you add to that, the Cardiff Blues have now scored only 34 points in the last 4 games. That's not good form, is it?
No, even if they are pretty when they get it right, Dean.
Yeah, no, I was just going to chime in and just say I refuse to watch Leinster because it's just a waste of my time. I know whoever they pick, they could just pick something. They could pick a few guys from whatever the grassroots level is, just chuck them in the middle of that team nowadays, and they would put 40 points on someone. They're just so good, so clinical. I will never be one advocating for that not to be in a team because it's awesome, but it's just so predictable now. It almost takes a little bit out of excitement out of the encounter because it's just like you just know they're pulling through and you know they're taking home 5 points. I think they're still on a clean run of bonus point victories this whole season. They're just too good. It's crazy. I think it's literally the words out of my mouth every single week when we talk about them. That's why I just refuse. I won't even comment in the future. I refuse to watch them and I refuse to comment on them.
That's fair. I'll have a word with Adam about your fee. So we're going to need to just cut down a segment of proportion relative to Leinster's games. A good game, Ulster Scarlets, a lot more of a contest. This one turned into a squeaker. There's a couple of big moments in this game. We got some video as well, which we'd line up. But Paul, this was good to see. Like this was a properly good, hard-fought game. Some really good moments, and it was a properly close one.
Yeah, I mean the two teams who you'd fancy. I mean, yes, Leinster look like they can basically beat anyone, but if it comes to the playoffs at the end of the season with kind of full strength teams, you think maybe one of those two might be able to cause Leinster some issues, and they both kind of stepped up and played out a cracker of a game, which is kind of what we want to see. Scarlets, I don't know, there'll be a little bit of frustration, I think, at letting that one slip away, but I think they showed enough that they'll be kind of hanging around at least by the end of the season.
Yeah, Sean, there's a couple of bits of video which I know you wanted to see, so we'll line them up in a second, but what do you think Scarlets take from that one?
I think they'll be disappointed, but I think they'll be really happy with the way they're playing. They had a sticky couple of starts after the shock of the last kick by Ben Healy, the first game of the season. But, Ulster are going really well. They've been dispatching sides and drilling, Coetzee and Cooney driving things. Ulster have been really good themselves with a lot of good young players. Now, Sean Reedy was excellent. And, to go out there and perform like that, come away with 2 points, don't forget, and could have been in a position at some stage to win. Paul's right. They will now, in that mood, the Scarlets can rattle people and are capable of going and getting away wins. So with a lot of internationals to come back, of course, and boys back from injury. So that augurs well for the Scarlets. They're flying a bit of it's a little flag, but there's a ray of hope from the men from Western. Ulster have been going so well, I think, to go there and get that close is really good. And I think they play a brand of rugby. I've been negative about the Welsh team and some of the Welsh regions. All their players look to offload. They move onto the ball. They've got tricks up their sleeve. They've got some line breakers. Steph Evans, Asquith, big ball carrier, and Calamafoni, who's been a great signing for them. Pretty solid set piece. So they've got their little nuts and bolts right. They've got a bit more of an all-court game. So yeah, there's hope there. And I think Ulster were a little bit concerned towards the end there because they've been in real good form.
The bad news is that they come up against Leinster next week, or this coming week. But let's pick out a couple of things from that game. So I know you wanted to talk about two tries, one really nice bit of kick passing, and some proper gas.
Well, it's more the little attention to detail of moving defenders. So before we run the first clip, there's the outside half, Dan Jones, flashes to the left of the scrum. When he comes up in a minute, you'll see that attracts Johnson and, more importantly, Lowry, the fullback, across to the side nearest where we'll look. So if we run the footage now, they move to the short side. Now, Lowry at the back has had to come across with Johnson. That frees up that space in behind Little. And then it's Steph Hughes, who they're not expecting to kick. And it's a pinpoint kick. Combia has held the touchline. This is the sort of thing. And likewise here now, it's a lovely little play. Blacker, you think is going to give to Dan Jones, right? So Cooney's watching him. He's staying tight. Johnson is staying tight as well, but it's a missed pass from Blacker, the 9. Now that holds Johnson, and Tyler Morgan now has a 2v1 on the wing. Lowry has to commit to him as a ball carrier. Steph Evans, look on the wing, has had to really wrestle past Craig Gilroy. And then he's got Cooney coming across. He transfers the ball to his left arm and scores. It's little detail like that, Dean will tell you, in the professional game, they make differences because it's all inches. Cooney could have got him there. Little could have got back and got Combia. But the little subtleties of moving those defenders around make a massive difference. And if the Scarlets can get those things right against a team as good as Ulster, then that augurs really well, as I said.
Listening to you speak there makes me just feel dumb. And I've just finished a 13-year career as a professional. It's insane. Like, yes, it is so much. I mean, for everyone who's watching this and thinks how, why it's so easy to beat a player and blah, blah, blah. There's so much that goes into creating literally an inch of gap between someone. And that's how precise every pass has to be along that chain, and all the timing of every running and making sure you can clear your space from the man. It was you're really your shit.
Thank you, my good man.
Yeah, that's good.
So then we move on to very, very rainy Scottstown, and Ben Healy is playing some nice rugby for Munster. His friend Mr. Casey at scrum half is incredibly impressive, and maybe a very tall red-haired man with flowing locks can fly under the radar, but he is part of Holley's heroes.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't be surprised if people in Munster are looking at Casey and Healy and thinking, could this be the new Stringer and Rog? It's early days yet, but they've played for the 20s together, Paul, haven't they? Really effectively. And they are those sort of players, and Ben Healy goes about his business in a nice sort of loping manner, but he's really effective. He's got a real good kicking game, yes, but he's sort of an old head on young shoulders as well. We've seen him kick some last-ditch kicks, which show, a real temperament and can cope with the pressure. And I quite like the way he sort of goes to the line, and he's quite a big man. We've got a little bit of footage here now. He's got a decent kicking game. Again, Paul and I will have seen him playing for the 20s. He seems a little bit unflappable, really. Big kicking game, and nice little skills about him. As I say, Casey at 9, Coombs at 8. Could that be an 8, 9, 10? See the way he runs. He's got a lopey sort. And here he's decided before the captain, CJ Stander, he's got his gum shield in his sock from the halfway line. Yeah, no problem, ref. Take it back, whatever you want. See look at his demeanour, and then rocks up, clocks in the red. First game of the season. They've clawed their way back into the game. Guess what? I'll just knock this over. Watch out for me. So, yeah, he's one of Holley's heroes this week. And it could have been any one of 3 or 4 players. Big kicks, but it's not just his kicking game. He's got a good temperament on him.
So that's Holley's hero number 1. Holley's hero number 2, someone a little closer home. Again, you are neutral and fair and balanced and all these things, but an aspect of George North's game which perhaps we wouldn't always look at.
George has had a lot of stick. He doesn't get into games as much as he used to. That's been the criticism from the Welsh public. Where's George? Why isn't he going hungry for work? Well, he was sent back from the Wales camp to play against Benetton, played on the right wing, and did get involved. To his credit, he's such a big specimen. He's still a young bloke. 100 caps for Wales, yes, but when you see him carry the ball at pace in the middle of the field, coming off his wing, then it's great. When he gets a little bit of space like this, you think, bang, he's running into big forwards and smashing them over. This pick and go was a real impetus carry that led to a try. And it's this sort of thing, George might be thinking, oh, do you know what? I need to get involved. Jackling the ball, counter-rucking, aiding Dan Lydiate in stealing another ball. He was involved in the game. So I think you've got to give credit where it's deserved, that he's been asked to go back and show something, and he has.
Where do you think he is now in his career? Because he it's weird because he's been around for so long. He came through so young, but he's not the same player he was.
No. I think he's struggled with a lot too soon. I think it becomes that, that sort of second season syndrome, Dean. But it's happened like 6 years on.
Yeah.
People sort of work him out. Don't forget, George had some serious concussion issues. Right, so that's obviously affected him, and it's tough to come back then, but he's back. And I think what he needed is that Josh Adams has come in and been amazing in the World Cup. You got Owen Lane breathing down your neck. Lewis Rees-Zammit has cropped up in the English Premiership, and all of a sudden gets capped, scores a try. Hello, and there's a number. Liam Williams can play on the wing. There's a number of those guys now with this competition. So this might do George good because, as you say, he's got time. And he's got all the attributes, all the physical attributes as well. He could go and be another Lion.
Maybe a loose forward for Eddie Jones in the new Lions environment. Dino, come in.
No, I just think life cycles of wingers. To achieve 100 caps as a winger is such a massive feat in the modern game. Like wingers is a role that seems to be ever evolving, and guys getting faster and bigger and stronger and can do more and more and more. So. He certainly had his issues, but the talent around him has grown, like you said. So it's not always just saying like, where's he gone? The talent's got better as well. So it's not. I think, it's a good for any player. I know you never say it when you're on the back end of it as a professional player that you're being the one that's been benched, and always say that competitions are good. When you're starting, competition's a great thing for any team. When you get benched and the competition's playing in front of you, it's not actually that great anymore. But you do realise what's true about it, and it puts a finger up your butt a little bit and says, "Hey, you need to do this, do that, do that." And you can't get away with cutting any corners. Not saying that George has done that, but it means maybe adding a little bit, another arrow to the quiver, if that's the right word.
That's great. You've been practicing your. You've been practicing your talk for getting back to New Zealand as well with that metaphor. Thanks for that. We'll rattle through the games for this weekend. So we got Connacht Ospreys, Benetton Dragons, Scarlets Leinster, Cardiff, Glasgow, Munster Zebre, and Edinburgh Ulster. There's one thing we haven't got to in this Guinness Pro 14 section, and it's for a very good reason. So there was a big decision in that Ulster Scarlets game. A lot of Welsh people got very exercised. A lot of rugby fans across the place got very exercised by the Kieran Treadwell yellow-red card decision. For those who didn't see it, it involved an initial contact, shoulder to general head area. I'm not going to talk any more about that. But there was a lot of talk about the process that was gone through between the officials. And I think that's fair comment to say there was a lot of talk. There is a statement of fact I have to make here that the sighting window hasn't yet closed for this one. Okay, so he wasn't given a red. The sighting window hasn't yet closed. What I can tell you is that we will have the Pro 14's referee chief, Greg Garner, on the show next week. And we absolutely will be going through this one with him come what may. Okay, so we like to do these things straight, folks. We will, but it has to be next week because the process is still going through whatever happens. You have our commitment on that.
I got a few more things for Mr. Garner.
You've suddenly gone very, very quiet there, fella. Right, get your mic up. Right, next segment. We covered lots of French earlier on. Sean, do you want to touch on why do you think there's so many replacements in the international game?
Well, no, I know why that is. My question, it's an open question, really, as to would the game be better if we had less substitutions, maybe a little bit more tiredness towards the end of the game, possibly a bit more space and less line speed. It's just an open question because I know some of the games that we have been watching, certainly from Argentina, New Zealand, some of the Australia, New Zealand games, the Argentina-Australia game, and we do get the odd one here. France have been fantastic. England, albeit defensively. Is that something? It's been a question that's thrown around on social media that would improve the game. I'm not so sure, and I understand why we've got so many. For player welfare is a big thing. Could it happen?
Paul, what do you think? Because the player welfare angle in France is sometimes a little bit interesting compared to elsewhere.
Yeah, interestingly, in France, they've got a slightly different approach because in the top 14, you have, I think it's 10 substitutions. So players can come off and then go back on again. In theory, it's only meant to be, you can only really come back on for an injured player, but it doesn't have to be blood or HIA. I mean, obviously, as soon as that was opened up, people have been using it and abusing it as is their way. I was for a long time a proponent of reducing the number of subs. I thought that if it did kind of lend itself to having even bigger blokes just ready to kind of come on and smash whoever. My concern now is that everyone is so big and so strong that you almost need it. It's all very well saying, oh, let's have some more tired bodies at the end and it'll open up space, but it's how much does that kind of put the players in danger? I mean, I'm sure Dean can speak to that much more in terms of having played at the end of some of those games when big guys are coming on, but how your body holds up at that point, I can only imagine how tough that must be, seeing kind of these huge guys coming on.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think the condition of the modern athlete is pretty good in terms of being able to stick it out for 80. I mean, I was never the fittest or strongest, and sometimes getting that last 10 minutes was sometimes the best minutes of the game for me. You sometimes can get into a real mental state of breaking down every barrier of fatigue, and you just find that good zone, and you're actually hitting people or just find yourself running harder and faster. So I don't know where I actually sit on the terms of this argument, but I think I'm not sure it would change the game with the modern day professional athlete the way they are.
I do like Harley Worthy's suggestion, which is there's one minor flaw which we'll get to. How about going back to injury only subs? Well, the problem with that one is that people lie, right? Yeah. So I have a suggestion. So if we want to do that, you can come off, say you're injured, but then we get to do something to you, right? So we get to make sure you're injured, right? And that's the kind of sensible trade-off, and that might, improve the incentive. But I lean towards Sean's view here. There's some, especially when you look at some of the stats that back rowers can put up towards the end of games when they come on. Let's say they come on, that you get 12 minutes to come on. A back row could come on and make 15 tackles in 12 minutes at test level, because they are completely fresh and they have one job to do, and that is their only job. And that's the thing that can create an illusion of a very tight amount of space when it's actually just one or two guys coming on and just like a pinball knocking people down. The player welfare angle is really important. I'm not sure. I think we've opened something we mightn't be able to get back. That's what I would think. Speaking of stats, how's that for a segue? Good stats versus bad stats. Paul, you mentioned stats about the Scotland-France game from last year. Go back on that. So for anyone who wasn't tuned in at that time, you were mentioning about kicking and possession. What was the difference between that game and the rest of the French campaign?
Yeah, so France have kicked more than the opposition in every game this year, with the exception of the game they lost in Scotland. They've had less possession than the opposition in every game, except for the loss in Scotland. They're clearly, they've been great to watch this year, but they kicked more than anyone in the Six Nations. They had less possession, I think less than anyone bar England in the Six Nations. So you don't need possession. You need to be efficient with it. You need to be able to take your chances. I mean, I haven't seen the stats from the weekend, but Ireland probably had 60+% possession against England. In fact, they had the ball all the time, but they were getting smashed backwards. Scotland against France at the weekend made far more meters with ball in hand, but that was because France kept on kicking deep and then saying, yeah, come on, just run at us. And fine, Stuart Hogg running at Virimi Vakatawa, he didn't get past him, so you're just going to get hammered back every time. Scotland were kicking up and challenging for the ball, and that's probably more effective, but it meant that France didn't make all those free meters. They're meaningless, really. Scotland made 300+ meters and never looked like scoring a try. So yeah, there's so many stats which could be very misleading if you just look at it on the surface without watching the game or kind of knowing what to look out for.
Yeah, Sean, sorry, Dean, you come in.
No, I was just saying, I think there's a lot of feel-good stats, a lot of those. I could imagine every one of those teams, especially Ireland, would have gone to the drawing board and said, listen, boys, we dominated that game. Look at the possession stats and look at all these meters we've made. And those are well, we'll ask Sean, the coach here, but I know as a player, those stats have been used to us on that Monday morning defeat of saying, you guys were actually better and you deserve to win. And we all go, yeah, you're right, we did. I can't wait to get into training in a couple of hours. And I wonder if you ever use those kind of in your favor as a coach as well, Sean.
No, mate. I was actually the other way. I was always very skeptical, so worked very hard with the analysts and the conditioners to make sure that we interpreted the stats properly. So, for example, my coaching staff and myself, we would code all aspects of the game, not the analysts, and we would put ratings on the coding. So if you, like you mentioned, dominant tackle, if Dean Bird made, let's just use round figures, you made 10 tackles in the game, they would be coded by whichever coach is responsible for that, based on the effectiveness of your tackle. It's not just a tally, player B next to you in the second row might make 10 tackles, but they're all passive, ineffective, and offload has got away. The situation, the scenario of the tackle is different. Whereas Dean Bird has put in 10 dominant, effective tackles, stopped them on the gain line, slowed the ball up, knocked them back, spilled the ball, created turnover, and they'd all be rated. So your tackle score would be relative to how effective on each situation. It takes a lot of time, and it takes the coaches a lot of time and effort, a lot of sleepless nights, but the player would know that it's the coach that's done it based on each individual instance, as opposed to an analyst. Because how often have you gone to an analyst and gone, hang on, you've put me down for a passive tackle there? That was it. Am I right?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, you go to the coach, Yeah. And I think, look, okay, I would flip it. Yeah, we've had 70% possession. Not you've done well. What have we done with it? How come we've had 70% possession? I mean, I haven't won the game.
Yeah.
So I'd be more like that as a coach.
Yeah, I've certainly, rather than, I've had a lot of blind pats on the back over the years for some pointless numbers, that's for sure.
So I had some fun with some people I know. So I put it out on Twitter and I got some really interesting stuff back in. Loads of stuff. So have a look at the timeline there, tagged under the sticks on it. You can find them. And I also had a little reach out into some of my friends who know things. So there's a couple of good things that came back. I want to put it out there. So here's an interesting one that definitely bugs me, and this came back from a data person. When you hear a commentator talking about the average number of points conceded when there's a yellow card, right? And they always say it's seven average. So the average number at test level is 2. Wow. The average number for a red is 9, but the average number for a yellow is 2. And half the time it's net 0, right? So I want to explain. I've said 2. That means it's net 2. So if you score a try, and you concede a penalty, or other way around, you concede 1 try unconverted, you score the penalty, that's net 2. It's not 7, folks. So stop saying it, right? That was a good one. The territory possession, when you brought up, that came up again and again and again. So possession doesn't mean a lot. We play a territory sport. It's all about territory. And you know what's wrong with the territory stat we get a lot of the time? It's too simplistic, because it basically says, am I in your half or am I in I half? That's it. So what do we need? We need broadcasters and writers and stuff say, tell me about the time I had the ball in the 22. That's much more interesting. Tell me about when I concede penalties. Do I do it in the opposition half? That's quite good. So it's these little nuances that can give us a bit more. And then another one, which I really liked, a current player got back and he said, do you mean like for a prop, it's been 376 days since his last try? And I'm going, yeah. I love that. So it's just like, it was really interesting putting it out there, because these things annoy people, and we're kind of still learning about how to interpret them in the right way. But my God, we know it's bullshit when we see it.
Yeah. I don't want to go out there and reopen. I mean, Sam Cane got in a lot of trouble for kind of calling out the New Zealand public, saying that they don't know anything about the game, essentially. And it just goes to show there's so much more to this game that I don't try to be an elitist or say I know more than you, but being inside the game, and as Sean just mentioned before, the amount of statistics that actually mean things to players within the team and to coaching staff is completely different to what you're fed week in, week out when you're watching the game. And it's just, I think it's important that people are quite conscious of not getting caught up in the wrong numbers, and that you're spot on in saying there are good stats and there are bad stats. And the good stats aren't typically seen by the public. They're the good stats are the ones that are delivered by a damn good coach on a Monday morning review.
But there's
hopefully at half time, actually. But
I think we're going to get better at stats. I think we've been getting better for the last, say, 5 to 7 years. However long we've seen stats come up more regularly on broadcast and in print. Like, for example, we're getting better at things like missed tackles. Just say, if I tell you that player X missed 3 tackles in a game, that actually doesn't tell you anything. Because it depends on the context. Was it around the tight? Was it out in the wing? Was he actually missed? He missed it, but he was there to make him run into somebody else. Did he try and make 25 tackles in the game, which means 3 out of 28 total attempts is a completely different stat. So we need the context all the way. And then the other thing is we're going to get better stats like possession chains. We've seen it in football. It'll come into rugby about how to describe when I get the ball, what did that entire chain of possession look like? We're going to get better at explaining that in a way that anybody can simply get.
Well, what we would work on in professional rugby is, like I said, interpreting the most important stats that affect the changes in the game. So, and then that shapes what you do in training and shapes your tactics. So if we're conceding a high percentage of our tries from turnover ball, well, obviously we've got to stop turning the ball over. That's one thing, isn't it? So we might kick more, a la France and the All Blacks when they were world champions, kick more than anybody else in the world. But secondly, it would shape my defense coach to look at our transition from the turnover to how we set up defensively quickly. If we want to continue to offload and be high risk and attack in such a way that our turnovers are high, we accept that statistic, then we'll flip that and we'll work really hard on our transition into defense and how we shape that really quickly so that we prevent conceding those tries. That's common sense, isn't it? Not just throwing out a turnover stat, which to a lot of players in the room would be, quite confusing. And if it is to professional players, then to the public it is. I think we're throwing out these generic stuff. The 22 entries one is a good one, and I will plug Analyst I, one of Guinness Pro 14's work that I was doing with Murray Kinsella and some of the stats guys, that we were interpreting those more, in a better way, in a more efficient way. And another one is, players on their feet. So when we were looking at Leinster's efficiency in the 22, when you tell somebody that, Leinster have been in the 22, 15 times in this half already, so what? When you tell them that Leinster score 80% of the time that they get into the 22, you start to, oh, crikey, do they? So they are now waiting for Leinster to get into the 22 because they know that 4 or 5 times we're going to see a try here. You know what I mean? So it's shaping that for broadcasting. It's shaping that for education. It's giving the more discerning viewer what they want, because let's face it, we all want a bit more of what goes on behind the scenes, the actual real nuts and bolts of what's in the game, don't we, that the teams are working on.
The one that intrigues me, you see it a lot with the NFL, is obviously it's a different game because you kind of have the coaches in the headsets kind of before every play, but they have so much about kind of what you expect in certain situations. And I'm intrigued to see whether that ever comes into rugby with when you should be kicking for goal, when you should be kicking for the corner. Ireland have obviously spent a lot of time kicking to the corner the last year or two, when you'd think they were easily kickable points. And I'd be quite intrigued to know kind of if people have actually worked out the expected points from those situations. Obviously, it depends whether you've got a good maul or, I mean, if you're Georgia, if you're playing against Georgia, then you might as well kick to the corner every time, because their defending maul seems to be terrible at the moment. But I think there's a lot of work to be done there. How much is in the teams, I don't know, but I'd certainly be intrigued to see that kind of more in public, and whether something's an odd decision to kick to the corner or whether it makes sense. I mean, you obviously can't go back, but things like, we obviously, Rob Shaw, people second guessed for years and years his decision to kick to the corner against Wales. But I think that's a situation where further, like 5-10 years down the line, we might actually think, okay, yeah, no, that was a 50-50 call, or that was a 60-40 call, bit of a gamble. But knowing what to go for and what not to, I think is there's a lot of room to kind of learn there.
I think that's a really good point. That's something we've seen in the game in the last, I'm going to say, a year, when it comes to taking a scrum from a penalty in midfield, right? Because we've now got another element to the equation. It's not simply line out or go for the post if it's in front. Some teams are now taking the scrum because it's a really good platform with a wide open field. And then now, as Holley says, the third set piece, which is the very common, okay, fine, I'll just take my tap 5 yards out instead of trying to take the line out first. And I get ahead of steam straight into the line. It's the Exeter special.
That's born out of, you see, thinking back to my experience, that's born out of you kick to the corner. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. The call, the overthrow, the missed time jump, the missed lift. Yeah, they compete. They stop them all and hold it up. There's right scrum, even more so. Yeah, you condense all the forwards. There's more space to attack, but even more so. And you add into the referee there as well, his psyche. Okay, he wants to get out of dodge. Right. Yeah, this is in a tight game. 5 meters out, it's a niggly scrum. It goes up and down. He doesn't want to make decisions. He wants to get out of there. So you negate all of that. Plus, you've got a better chance of retaining possession. You know, organized guys on the ball carrier, tap, go, build phases from there. If you're Exeter or England or Leinster, you're going to do that, aren't you?
Yep, a lot of the time. I got another one in. So these are coming in live from a very well-placed analyst. I like seeing sevens players with high total tackle misses if their total attempts are high, right? Okay. So the logic is, if that player is doing enough in his general play to worry people that much that he gets that close, it means he's putting pressure on a ball carrier somewhere. So without even seeing anything else, there's little subtleties here that I wouldn't always get. So this is good. I think this stats section has made me very, very happy. Okay, I feel like celebrating. Dean, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, look at this. Now, what a celebration this is.
That's just Benetton's calendar summed up right there.
Okay, who is that? He's a very, very happy fat man.
That is Tiziano Pasquale. I've sent her a message with their photo earlier this week, and he gave me a little bit of a different definition of what he was doing, but he's certainly a happy man.
Oh man,
it's good to see that.
It's good. I need to gift that and actually just use it all the time when I'm very, very happy. I need to give everyone joy on Twitter.
The 3 zooms, they're just slightly getting more and more. That's good work there from Adam.
It's great. We're reaching the end of the show. Oh, okay.
Oh yes, please.
Ian McKinley, can we see Dean Budd's calendar photo from 2018? I think we have this somewhere. I think we do.
See, no chains involved there.
It's a lot of oil.
There was a lot
on that
of
photo,
oil.
my friend. Yeah.
My girlfriend certainly wouldn't have been comfortable if she saw me getting oiled up there. I'll tell you that much.
We're drawing a line under this one. We're gonna have a look at some of the other comments. There's been plenty coming in, plenty around Christoph Dominici, who before we went on air, we received the very sad news that he has passed away at 48. So a very tremendously exciting player during his career, and gone too soon. So rest in peace, Christoph Dominici. There's a lot of other good comments here. Billy Bob Jolly, question: when is it time for Ireland to bring in Ryan Baird, Coombs, Penny, Levy, Jimmy O'Brien, Casey, Harry Byrne, etc.? I thought Georgia, but Farrell hasn't brought them in. So a little bit of background here. You would normally think that in any other year, bring people in for Georgia. The decision from Ireland camp has been, no, we've picked our squad. Keep the squad. There's no point sending people back to the provinces. Just keep everything as it is. The guys who've been training with the squad deserve their chance too. So that's the logic. But I think we'll see them in, a lot of those players, very, very soon, Paul. There's a lot of talent there in that assembly line.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because some of the pack, I mean, it's not like this. Well, I say that, I guess Peter O'Mahony and CJ Sanders starting are getting older, but they've, especially the back row, there've been so many young guys coming through that it's all very well wanting Penny and these guys in, but the guys you really want them replacing are only 22, 23, and it's kind of making a decision. I mean, it's a little bit like Italy with Garbisi seemed to jump the queue a little bit when there'd been a few young 10s there. Ireland, they've got such depth in the back row that when do you give those guys a shot? I mean, Ryan Baird, it feels like it's only a matter of time before he establishes himself. But then I know I've been quite impressed with Quinn Rue over the last few weeks.
Very different player, it's fair to say.
Yes, that is for sure. I don't know whether him and James Ryan, whether that works against the biggest packs.
I'm not quite sure he's athletic enough, to be really honest, in terms of. Yeah, I mean, the line out doesn't seem to quite function, and I don't quite. I mean, he's there in defense, I guess, but Ryan Baird, Bard, or however you pronounce his name, is just everywhere, and I'd love to. I think Ireland misses that, or needs that, and misses it. I haven't had it.
Pritchard 0161 _ Can be a real potent try scorer, international in the making, as with Jack Morgan, who's currently Wales' in-form open side at the moment. Sean Holley.
Yeah, both of these are really impressing. They've done their time as well a little bit in the Welsh Premiership for various teams. However, both of those guys that I mentioned, they're unfortunate. Their positions in Wales, we don't really struggle with. Jack Morgan's playing 7. Well, hello, how many do you want to name? And then Ryan Combier, his try scoring rate is phenomenal. But the guys I mentioned before, it's just a queue. There's a queue of them, and the guy he plays with at the moment, Steph Evans, is on fire. You could say that he would be ahead of Combier at the moment. As for could he play in the future? Yeah, why not? Why not? But there's so many at the moment. This guy Matt Prothero at the Ospreys is lighting it up for them at the moment with a bit of X factor. I mentioned Owen Lane; he's due to come in very soon. Summerhill, who is playing well. So we've got loads on the wings. We've got loads of 7s. We've got loads of 9s. We need some front 5 ball carrying number 8s and 6s, please. Centres.
I was going to say, do any of those wingers end up in the centre? North or
Owen
Lane?
Owen Lane could, I think, yeah. I've always thought that he started as a youngster, Paul, didn't he? He could do that. But we're certainly searching at the moment.
Gareth McWhinney asks, are we going to get more than a few seconds about Ulster, saying as they are unbeaten still? Doubt it. Should have been red with still a bonus point win.
Well,
that's fair
I
comment.
mentioned Sean Reedy, I mentioned Coetzee, I mentioned Cooney, I mentioned Little, I mentioned they're unbeaten. I reckon they've been put in sides away. So I think he's talking about you 3.
Yeah,
well, I think I've plugged Coetzee every single week since I've been on the show, to be honest. So
actually, he's basically just going for me.
Hearing the one player thinks maybe they're more than just him.
He's going, listen, you biased dub, stop talking about Leinster all the time and give the Ulster boys a shout. So fair play.
I'll give one guy a shout because I think I'm possibly the only commentator in Pro 14 history to give a prop man of the match, or Guinness player of the match as it is now. Eric O'Sullivan.
He's really good, isn't he?
He's been brilliant. I give him a player of the match down in the Dragons. He was excellent. He was really good. Not just the set piece stuff, offloading, his clear outs were great tackles, his all-round game. I thought, oh, look, for a big lad, I thought, oh, this is perfect, for Ireland. And I see he's been called up this week. So
it's a great point. As soon as you mention him, he is the exception to the statement I made earlier. He's the only person being called up to the squad. So we absolutely expect to see him coming in this weekend. Adam, so next one, James O'Brien. For next week, can you ask about the off-field mitigating factors that players use to get bans reduced? We have touched on this before, and we will absolutely touch on this again. Yes, we will. Any more, Adam? Think we might be
scuttling behind the scenes.
We might be. Okay,
He's got to be ready. He's the one who's put the question in there.
I'm calling it. That's a wrap. That is this week's show. Thank you to Dean Budd. Thank you, Sean Holley. Thank you, Paul Eddison, for joining us. And beautiful bookshelf. It's great. Thank you, Adam Redmond behind the scenes, and thank you all of you who've given us some of your time this evening or listening back, doing the washing up or the ironing or going for a walk, whatever gets you through the day. This has been Under the Sticks. I'm Andy McGeady. Enjoy the rugby this weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
They call me cheetah, cheetah, cheetah. Ooh, cheetah, cheetah, cheetah.